I would like to share my relationship story. Today my wife has been portraying herself as saintly and pious in public, but behind my back she has been doing something vile. 2 years ago I met a woman at a library and eventually married her. She has exceptional public speaking skills and can effortlessly convince anyone of her devout nature. People often praised her as a woman of character, grace, and dignity. As an English teacher at a nearby school, her impeccable manners left a lasting impression on everyone she encountered. Her elegance and the way she carried herself never failed to amaze me. It was our shared passion for reading and visiting libraries that brought us together, and through these common interests, my wife and I fell deeply in love. As a journalist, my profession demands that I work at unusual hours and be available anytime, especially when working on critical reports or cases. Due to the nature of my job, I often find myself staying overnight at work to meet the demands and responsibilities of my role. Nevertheless, my wife's profession as a teacher afforded her a more flexible work schedule, allowing her to return home much earlier than I did. Despite my demanding job, I made every effort to give her the time and attention she deserved. Sacrificing outings with my friends, I prioritized spending quality time with my wife, cherishing the moments we could share together. On the contrary, my wife had a wide circle of friends whom she regularly visited and welcomed into our home when she felt lonely during my absences. It brought me comfort to know she had the support and companionship of her friends. As her birthday approached, she expressed her desire to celebrate with both her friends and our families. In response, we organized a grand celebration to honor her wishes and make her birthday truly special, bringing together her friends and loved ones for a memorable event. During the party, I noticed one man who seemed visibly drunk, dancing and laughing loudly. When my wife introduced us, she mentioned that he was Eric, an old friend from her college days. It became apparent that Eric was well known to her other college friends, who were also enjoying their time with him at the party. Eric proved to be a lively and fun-loving individual, and his presence brought joy to everyone at the party. When my wife introduced me to him, he warmly embraced me, displaying a friendly and affable nature. As a gesture of friendship, Eric gifted my wife an expensive camera, which she adored and appreciated. As the evening progressed, the celebrations got merrier, and a few of my wife's friends, including Eric, became quite intoxicated. Consequently, they opted to spend the night at our house. This unplanned turn of events provided an unexpected opportunity for me to bond with my wife's friends. I embraced the chance to connect with them on a deeper level and genuinely enjoyed their company. I genuinely enjoyed the camaraderie we shared throughout the night. Initially, I didn't expect my wife's friends to be as enjoyable to be around, assuming they might share her passion for literature and teaching, and possibly even be labeled as nerds. However, a few days later, while sitting in my office with a coworker, he expressed admiration for my open-mindedness and modern outlook. I was intrigued by my coworker's comment about considering me modern, so I inquired further to understand what he meant. To my surprise, he mentioned that he noticed I allowed my wife to join fan clubs and various online streaming services. However, this information left me shocked because I had never given her permission to do so, and she had never discussed it with me either. When I returned home that day, I decided to address the matter with my wife and find out what was happening. She was taken aback by my question and reassured me that she was not involved with any platform like OnlyFans. She clarified that my coworker must have misunderstood the situation, perhaps confusing someone else for her. To clear up any confusion, she explained that she was active on certain streaming websites, where she received monetary support from people who enjoyed her content and wanted to interact with her. Since I wasn't familiar with streaming websites, she elaborated, comparing them to social media platforms. On these websites, users can log in and receive gifts or money from their supporters, who appreciate their content and want to engage in conversations with them. Due to my limited knowledge about various technologies, websites, and apps, I accepted her explanation and decided that it wasn't a significant concern since social media usage is common nowadays. I attributed my coworker's comments to perhaps being overly cautious or irritated by something unrelated. In the following days, I became deeply engrossed in my work as I was working on an essential article. Consequently, I completely forgot about the streaming website and the remarks my coworker made about my wife, as my focus was consumed by my journalistic responsibilities. Amidst my intense work schedule, I never found the time to look up the streaming website or verify my coworker's remarks about my wife. My focus remained solely on completing and submitting my article, and I barely had any spare moments. After a week of dedicated effort, I finally submitted my article, and as I took a moment to relax at my desk with a cup of tea in the evening, my coworker approached me again. His presence served as a reminder of the comments he had made regarding my wife's supposed involvement with online friends. At that point, the issue resurfaced in my mind, and I felt the need to address it once more. Feeling the need to clarify the matter, I broached the subject again with my coworker, explaining that my wife was using streaming websites more akin to social media platforms and not the specific app he had mentioned. However, my coworker responded with laughter and dismissed my understanding, asserting that streaming services were entirely different from social networking sites. At that moment, my coworker proceeded to show me my wife's account on OnLifeEns, and I was utterly shocked to see explicit photographs of her dressed inappropriately. My emotions shifted from confusion to intense rage, as I strongly believed in maintaining certain boundaries in a relationship and expected the same from my partner. I felt deeply hurt and betrayed that my wife had engaged in such behavior without my knowledge, and it clashed with the principles and values I held dear. I was not the kind of person to condone or accept such actions, and this discovery left me shaken and upset. I share your feelings of discomfort and concern about your wife's involvement with the streaming website and the nature of some of its content. It's understandable that you would be deeply disturbed and disgusted by the discovery, especially given your strong values and beliefs about maintaining boundaries in a relationship. Discovering such actions by someone you thought you knew well can be incredibly shocking and hurtful. It's natural to feel bewildered and conflicted when faced with a situation that goes against the image you had of your wife as a devout and intelligent person. It may be essential to have an open and honest conversation with her to understand her perspective and address the situation. My wife, a teacher who always spoke about loyalty and grace, was the last person I expected to be involved in such a situation. My colleague's words about her actions on the streaming website were hard to digest, and I found it challenging to come to terms with the information. Overwhelmed with emotions, I excused myself from the office much earlier than usual, feeling terrible and needing some time alone to process everything. I had an overwhelming urge to express my disappointment and frustration to my wife, to confront her about what I had learned. The conflicting emotions inside me made me want to scream, but I knew I needed to approach the situation with composure and have an honest conversation with her. So I left my workplace early and rushed home. I was unsure of what to do next as I was driving home in my car. When I arrived home, I used my own key to go inside, and when I entered our living room, I was shocked to see my wife with Eric. They were deeply engaged in the act on our living room. As the lively tunes of soft music filled the room, my unnoticed presence allowed me to stumble upon an unexpected sight: a camera set up for filming. Caught off guard, I swiftly made my way towards the camera and grabbed it, ensuring I remained unnoticed. To my astonishment, it seemed that they were not aware of my presence until that moment. The room's occupants, including my wife, displayed shocked expressions as I suddenly appeared before them. Her face turned pale, and she quickly covered herself with a blanket. Nearby pillow. Upon stumbling upon the camera, I made a shocking discovery. Numerous recordings featuring them engaged in acts similar to adult movies. The explicit nature of these videos left me feeling utterly disgusted. Overwhelmed with rage, I couldn't contain my anger and directed it at Eric, who was pleading with me, explaining that it was all for business. Despite his pleas, my emotions took control as I lashed out in frustration. After firmly escorting him out of my home, I issued a stern warning that any attempt to return would result in involving the authorities. Once I had dealt with Eric's intrusion, I went back inside to find my wife, who was visibly upset, wearing a t-shirt. Filled with a mix of emotions, I couldn't help but express my distress, questioning her actions and how she could betray me in such a humiliating manner. After the commotion, there was a brief period of silence that lasted for about 5 minutes. Eventually, she broke the silence and explained her actions, asserting that her motives were solely driven by the desire to cater to her followers and streaming audience. She insisted that she had no intention of cheating on me and clarified that her primary objective was to monetize those movies to generate income. In an attempt to justify her actions, she argued that many others partake in similar practices, suggesting that it was a common occurrence, and urged me to remain calm about the situation. Regrettably, I allowed my emotions to get the best of me, and for the first time in my life, I reacted impulsively by slapping her. She didn't show any signs of regret or embarrassment, but instead tried to reassure me that her behavior was normal. In response, I confronted her, expressing my belief that she was being disingenuous by feigning modesty to gain people's respect while secretly engaging in tasteless actions. I realized that my actions were not justified, and I should have handled the situation differently. As my anger became evident, she began to cry and implored me to keep whatever I had discovered a secret. She was desperate to safeguard her image, and argued that since most people didn't have access to those dark websites, her questionable business practices remained unknown to the public. Her plea was to conceal the truth, as she wished to keep her dark dealings hidden from scrutiny. I insisted that she put an end to her deception and promptly asked her to leave my home. However, despite my request, she persistently sent me letters and emails, begging for my forgiveness and promising that she would never repeat the same mistake again. Nevertheless, I found it incredibly difficult to trust someone who had acted so deceitfully. Her fear was evident, as she worried that if her secret was exposed, it could result in her losing her job and suffering reputational damage. She had been living a facade in front of her friends, family, and others, pretending to be someone she was not. And this fear haunted her. Despite her pleas, I struggled to find it in my heart to trust this woman again, considering the depth of her deception. The truth finally came to light, and it left me absolutely furious. I consider myself a reasonable person, and if someone asked me to keep a reasonable and innocent secret, I would do so without hesitation. However, in this case, my wife had been engaging in morally questionable behavior behind my back. Her primary concern seemed to be preserving her reputation and projecting a fake image to the world. Discovering this betrayal was deeply unsettling and profoundly disappointing. Upon discovering her actions, my anger reached its boiling point, and I couldn't tolerate her deception any longer. I made the difficult choice to kick her out of my home. In an attempt to calm my nerves, I turned to smoking and drinking coffee. Once I'd regained some composure, I decided that it was essential to expose the truth about my wife before she could harm anyone else with her deceitful ways. With incriminating evidence in the form of kept camera recordings, I had enough proof to reveal her character flaws and infidelity. After obtaining the offensive recordings, I transferred them to my laptop and took decisive action. I emailed the evidence to her school administration, ensuring they were aware of her questionable behavior. Additionally, I engaged a lawyer to initiate the process of sending her divorce papers. I felt it was necessary to expose her actions to her school friends and family so they were aware of the truth. Taking a firm stance, I filed for divorce and was fortunate enough not to be required to pay alimony due to the compelling evidence of her infidelity that I presented in court. It was a difficult and painful process, but I knew it was essential to protect myself and end the marriage based on trust and respect. As a consequence of the evidence I provided, her school took immediate action and terminated her employment. Moreover, her teaching license was revoked, as she was deemed unsuitable to continue in that profession. Her friends were utterly astonished upon discovering the evidence of her infidelity. They could hardly believe that their seemingly virtuous friend was involved in such inappropriate behavior. Her family, who held conservative Christian values, also learned about her actions through the films. As a result, they chose to sever ties with her. The revelations had a significant impact on her personal and professional life, and it was evident that her choices had far-reaching consequences on her relationships and reputation. Her parents were utterly mortified by their daughter's actions and reached out to me to offer their apologies. In the wake of the scandal, my wife chose to escape the city to avoid further humiliation. Despite her actions, she called me and pleaded for a second chance, revealing that Eric had not been genuinely committed to their relationship. Instead, he had been exploiting her to create those movies and profit from them. While her confession revealed more about the situation, it was challenging for me to come to terms with the deceit and betrayal. Deciding whether to grant her a second chance was an agonizing choice, considering the gravity of the situation and the breach of trust. Despite my wife's assurance that she had stopped making those videos, I found it difficult to trust her words. The discovery of her actions shattered my faith in her, leaving me deeply skeptical. However, I am grateful that this revelation came before we had children. The fact that we didn't have children spared them from being entangled in this difficult situation. The universe unveiled her true nature in the early years of our marriage, and though it was painful, I am thankful for knowing the truth and being able to make informed decisions moving forward. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. And if you enjoyed it, please support us with a like and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments.